Okay, let's see if this is working. I'm really eager to talk with you today about what I'm here to talk about because it is such a critical part of this You Create Your Reality business. So let's just wait and see for the technology to connect. Make sure the streaming is working. Looks like my end is all set, so we're just waiting on YouTube. So I show that I'm streaming. YouTube hasn't quite caught up yet. There it goes. Okay, let's see if this... Yes, the sound's working. Okay. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm really, really excited about talking about today's session, not just because it's personal, but because it answers an important question that must be answered in order to soothe your resistance to getting everything that you want, especially those really big things that you want to happen in your life. There's so many levels to this subject we're going to be talking about today. I can't cover them all in a live, but I might speak to some more of them in the future. If you'd like me to follow up with another live to talk about in more detail some of the things I'm going to talk about today, let me know in the comment section and I'll be happy to schedule a live to do that. So for you that are new, this is the video series in which I offer instruction on how to create your reality. Now, just as a caveat, most people aren't going to be able to take these instructions and be able to do very much with them. It takes a dedicated focus on specific aspects. Actually, it takes a dedicated focus on leveraging the fundamental spiritual principles underlying how physical reality works. You have to learn what those are and then leverage them in your daily life experience in order to produce the results I talk about in all of my videos. This is why, and I'm going to be doing a Worthiness Wednesday video shortly on this subject, but this is one of the reasons why two of my newest clients who have a lot of background in manifestation, law of attraction, and things like that, the first day we started working together with these two clients, they realized how little they actually know about how to leverage the fundamental spiritual principles underlying how physical reality works. So listening to these lives is not going to give you a whole lot of information. It gives you a whole lot of information, but your ability to implement it in a way that produces results may be limited. So that's the caveat. All right, let's jump into it. So this is such a good question, and it's not one that clients ask me very often, but when they do, it opens a really great opportunity to talk about the details of manifestation. The question is, if this stuff works, how come I am not rich yet? They don't say the yet part. They say yet. They say, how come you're not rich if this manifestation stuff works? And when I answer the question, as I said, it tends to broaden for them an understanding of how the manifestation process works and how the fundamental spiritual principles underlying how physical reality works. There are so many of them. And so if you aren't on top of them, you will, as you'll hear shortly, you'll tend to put resistance on your trail, on your path. The trail is behind you, your path is in front of you. You'll put resistance on your path, and as a result of putting resistance on your path, you will delay the manifestation. So in this live, I'm going to talk about, or I should say, you're going to learn what castles and buttons are. We're going to talk about why castles usually take a while to manifest. Money is a major castle for most people. We're also going to talk about how ancestral legacy affects some manifestations. And we're going to talk about why we often work against receiving things we desire most. And I'm going to address all of those things. You're going to learn all of those things from my own personal story. Let's jump right in. So, as with most human beings, before I realized what I share on my YouTube channel, I was I allowed myself to clip in to the general idea of what's important in life. One of those things was money and how to make money. And so I remember early on in the early days of high school, I was assessing my talents and abilities and decided that the public affairs field, so public relations, communications, these kinds of things, was probably the best path to me making a lot of money. At the time, I didn't believe that I could be an entrepreneur, and I didn't believe I could make a lot of money. And so I was looking at what career path, based on my talents, would enable me to receive at least a six-figure salary. Interesting thing is, during those early years, as I was focusing on communications and public relations, the universe was conspiring to deliver to me that outcome. And actually, that's where I ended up. I ended up joining the Marine Corps, and when I took a test in the Marine Corps, I think it was the ASVAB test, I scored so highly that they suggested that I go into their combat correspondence program, their public affairs, the military version of the public affairs program. And so I took one of those billets, and when I came out of boot camp, went to journalism school, and then became basically a reporter in the Marines. After I left the Marines, I became the spokesperson for a large organization here in the Northwest called the Bonneville Power Administration, and I ran their media relations department. And then I went to become the community relations manager for Intel Oregon. Oh, before I went to Bonneville, I also was the public affairs spokesperson for the United States Marine Corps in the entire Northwest region of the United States. So all of this unfolded pretty well in terms of my initial intention that I set early in high school. But as I moved through that trajectory I just described for you, I began entertaining the possibility of making a lot of money. And so as I moved from Bonneville to Intel, I started to focus on that. And that's what opened the door to going to Intel, because at the time, Intel was in its heyday and was paying people a lot of money. And I did make a lot of money there. But at the same time I made a lot of money there, I also realized how empty that life was. I tell a lot of people in my life about that experience of how I was living high on the hog. I was a jet setter. I was traveling all over the place on vacation. I learned to scuba dive. I learned to become a pilot. I did all these things that money could buy, including having a really nice home and a really nice car and a bunch of nice clothes, but I was not happy. What's more, inside of Intel, I was becoming acquainted with the dynamics within a corporate organization, and that experience was highly distasteful for me. Little did I know that my career path and other paths in my life were preparing me for this part of my life where I could relate with clients in a resonating way because of the background that I had moved through. So it was beneficial that all these things were happening. But along the way, I simultaneously built a strong desire for and an aversion of money. Now let's talk about castles and buttons. If you've watched my other videos, you kind of have a sense of what this is. This is a term, castles and buttons is a term that was coined by Abraham and Esther and Jerry Hicks of the Law of Attraction fame. A castle, as the name implies, is something that's big, something in your life that's big. You don't have a lot of castles, just like in physical reality, there aren't a lot of castles. You don't have a lot of castles, but these castles that you have, these desires that you have, they're really big. You have a lot of desire for them. Often, with regard to your castles, you also have a lot of resistance for them. You don't believe that you can. There's a degree of resistance in the sense that you don't believe that you can have the castle that you desire. So that's what castles are. Castles are big desires that you have. You really, 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 really want them. There aren't a whole lot of things that are like that in your life. And as a result of really, 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 really wanting them, often what's accompanied by that strong desire is some level of disbelief. And as a result of the disbelief, you tend to take action that resists the fulfillment of the desire. It puts resistance on your path. The combination of your desire and your resistance is what creates the delay. The reason why it takes so long oftentimes for people to manifest a castle is because they have both strong desire paired with strong resistance. So that's a castle. Buttons, as the name implies, are ubiquitous. They are everywhere. They are smaller desires that you have. In fact, you could say buttons are desires you have, the desire for which is so unconscious, or you're so unaware of the desire that the desire for the button is relatively weak. But more importantly, because you don't have a lot of focus on that desire, the fulfillment of the desire comes much, 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 much faster. And so, as the name button implies, you have a lot of buttons in your vibrational mix. Very few castles, but a lot of buttons. And so, because you don't have a lot of desire, strong desire, I mean, like desire that looks like this, I want it. Because you don't have a desire like that for your buttons, and because of that you don't have a lot of resistance for your buttons tend to manifest relatively quickly. They range from everything such as your ability to take the next breath, to there being an abundance of oxygen for you to breathe, to waking up the next morning, to being able to move your body from here to there. They also include things like you might one day think about your friend, and because you don't have a whole lot of resistance about that thought, the next day or maybe in the next few hours, your friend calls you, and then you say, wow, I was just thinking about you. That's a button manifesting. My broader perspective says that's a really good example you just gave of a button. Yeah, it is a really good example. So buttons are desires that you have for which the desire is relatively light, and as a result, the resistance is also light to non-existent. Castles, you don't have a lot of those. They're usually things you really, really, really want. They're really, really, really big, and because of that, you have an accompanying level of disbelief. And as a result of the strong desire and the disbelief, you tend not to get those things. So that's what castles and buttons are. I've also talked about why they take so long to manifest. So that's point 1 and point 2 of the things I promised you'd learn in this live. So now let's get back to my life as a demonstration of all of this. Through all of this, my career experience and my interactions with money, I developed both a strong desire for money and also an aversion to money. Now, most people have this going on in their vibration. You'll look at people, if you look around you, maybe even look at yourself, you will notice that there are people in your life who have a strong desire for money, like they want to be rich. And at the same time, they will complain about billionaires. They will vilify rich people, while at the same time desiring to be rich. Now, those people, the people that I'm talking about, they won't tell you to your face that they want to be rich, that they want to have a lot of money. And in fact, a lot of the reasons why they're vilifying rich people is because there's a seed of envy or jealousy in them about those people. So they won't tell you that they want a lot of money, or maybe they will. Most people will not, because most people have a story, a belief that says money is an overabundance of money. There's no such thing as that, but an overabundance of money is bad, because they believe that there's a limited pie of money, and that if one person has a whole lot of it, it takes away from a whole bunch of other people's ability to have some of it. So most people have money as a castle, a lot of money. And as a result of that strong desire, they also have a lot of resistance. They don't believe they can have the amount of money that they want. And that's what holds them in the place of not having a lot of money. My life was an example of that on steroids. So after I left Intel, I set out to be an entrepreneur. And I had a great big pile of money that I had left Intel with, and I put all of that money into my entrepreneurial startups. None of them were successful enough to produce the large amount of money I wanted. Why? Because I was trying to make it happen, you guys. This is something that I talk with my clients about all day long, because everyone's in the belief that, almost everyone, my broader perspective just said, is in the belief that in order to make money, you have to make it happen. Even the phrase, I'm going to make money, has that implication in it. But you don't have to make money. You don't have to make money happen. Money will come naturally to you when you align with all that is, and you get your fingers on the fundamental spiritual principles underlying how physical reality works. Just like everything else that flows into your life experience, money can flow in that way too. But when I was working as an entrepreneur, I was believing I had to make it happen. And of course, because life is a mirror, it was reflecting back to me a physical reality that was matching that. I was meeting up with co-founders and CEOs. I was a COO of a startup at one time. All of these people that I was meeting up with were in the same space of trying to make something happen, and it was rubbing me the wrong way. Now here you go. This is just what I was talking about a minute ago. The fact that it was rubbing me the wrong way meant that I was resisting what was unfolding. I was resisting the universe reflecting back to me my collection of beliefs on the subject of money, success, being an entrepreneur, many subjects that combine into what I call my belief constellation. And so the more I worked in this entrepreneurial space, the more I was trying to make money happen. And the interesting thing is, this is so good. The more I was trying to make money happen, the more the money that I had was going away. Until finally, I had no more money in my bank account. I had spent all my money trying to start these startups. By that time, I had also realized something that was contributing more resistance to my path. I had a story that this story is accurate. It's a probable future reality. But at the time, I was holding on to a lot of resistance about what I'm about to say too. I had a story that we could create a future in which there is no money, where we don't have to earn a living, where we don't have to go work jobs we don't like, and where we can live in a state of abundance. Now, if you watch my AI and Spirit episodes, you know that we're heading toward that reality. But at the time, back then, I believed I had to make that outcome happen, just like I believed that I had to make money happen. And so I founded this organization called Copiosis, Copiosis. If you look it up, you will see some information on the internet about it. I've since taken the website down, but there are other sites, like I think my YouTube channel is still up, and a couple of other places you can find out about it. I spent almost 10 years running that organization, and that organization was all about, if I'm honest with myself, all about pushing against money, trying to eliminate money. In other words, I was resisting money, and I was building an enterprise around that objective. Now, think about castles and buttons. Think about castles and what I said about them. Here I was creating a reality in which I was resisting my desire to have lots of money. It was right about that time that I had encountered Esther Hicks and Abraham. And in my, if you follow my YouTube channel, you know that in my YouTube channel description, there is a link to my origin story. And in my origin story, I talk about how I received direct mentoring from Abraham. In that mentoring, we talked about copiosis, and they were, in their soft way, strident about me giving that up because there was no need for me to push against my desire. They talked about some other things with me relative to my orientation around money, and as a result of that, I let all of that go. And shortly after that, I set an intention to have, my intention was specifically these words: I want to put a little bit of money into something, and as a result of that, have a lot of money come back to me with me not having to do anything about it. And in a few short years, an opportunity unfolded which offered me the put a little bit of money into it part. The second part is still unfolding, and the reason why it's unfolding, I can go into a lot of detail about this, but I'm not. But the reason why it's still unfolding is not because the thing that I put money into is taking a long time. It's because of the resistance I built up over the 10 years of me pushing against money. If you look up copiosis, you will see that that enterprise I was running was specifically putting on my path resistance about money, wealth, abundance, and a successful future. And like I say to all of my clients, you can't manifest around your resistance. This manifestation business, it's not magic. You can't go and all of a sudden your manifestation appears. No, you have to contend with the momentum of your current state of belief on the subject of the thing you're wanting to manifest. And for most people, manifesting money has a lot of resistance in it. Again, I could go into a lot of detail about the resistance that exists for most people about money. And that's why it's so hard for money to come into people's lives. And the reason why I'm not rich yet is because I spent over 10 years, actually. When you think about my careers, my 3 career paths, and then you think about what happened when I became an entrepreneur, and then what happened after I started Copiosis, you can see that I have put a tremendous amount of resistance on my path on the subject of money. Now, you can't manifest around your resistance. So I demonstrated this to a client recently. I think it was this last week. So here is your castle. Make sure you can see this. Yeah. Here is your castle. You're wanting to manifest this castle in your life. But here's the resistance you have relative to your castle. So your castle is buried under a bunch of resistance. As you move through something like the positively focused practice and you begin to soothe this resistance, you get to the point where you start seeing indicators of your castle popping up. Can you see the little tip of my finger poking up through my, here it is right here. It's poking up there. You start to see a little bit of evidence of your manifestation occurring. For most people, they don't even get there. For most people, it takes, on some castles, it can take lifetimes to realize the castle because they don't know what we're talking about. But in something such as the positively focused practice where you can deliberately soothe the resistance, you start getting a little bit of evidence. And the evidence for me on the unfolding of my large pile of money falling into my lap without me having to do anything to get it, the evidence of that showing up is this apartment unfolding, the bicycle that was replaced, the $1,300 bicycle that was replaced without me having to spend a dime to get it. It's the constant flow of clients coming into my life experience willing to pay me for what I know. It's all kinds of evidence showing up in my life experience demonstrating to me that this castle I have is unfolding. Meanwhile, amplifying my alignment to the castle by appreciating the evidence that's showing the castle is emerging helps continue to soothe the resistance that currently exists, that is still holding, not even holding back anymore, that is still causing friction, that's a good word for it, that is causing friction on the unfolding of this manifestation, this castle that I'm talking about. So There's another aspect, and I just looked at my notes here, and so I've talked about number 4, why we often work against receiving things we desire most. I just described that because we're not aware of castles and buttons. We're not aware of how our thoughts and beliefs can work against us realizing what we want. And as a result of that, we can delay, sometimes indefinitely, the unfolding of a desire we have. And I want to talk about number 3 because this is important relative to everything that I've told you about my life experience. So my mother and my father both had a lot of negative momentum around the subject of money. They were not very good with money. And because I'm their son, I absorbed a lot of those thoughts and beliefs just kind of like by osmosis. And so I have some heritage, some ancestry, some lineage relative to the vibration that I have on the subject of money. Some of it is coming from my parents, some of it's coming from their parents, and some of it is also coming from my own previous life experiences. So this expansion business, it's a eternal experience. Some of the things that you're coming into in this life experience with strong desire for, the reason why you have strong desire for them is because you've been desiring them for several lifetimes. So there's this ancestral legacy, but also some past life momentum that I'm dealing with as I'm moving through the process of realizing this money manifestation. And here's the cool thing about this. I was just talking with a new client who is trans attracted, and he asked me why did I come into the world as trans attracted? And my immediate response was, because you came into the world to demonstrate for others what is possible on the leading edge of life. And the same thing is true with me with regard to money. One of the things I've come into to demonstrate, in addition to being a spiritual teacher, is to soothe the momentum, the ancestral momentum of my ancestry on the subject of money. We are all one, and we move in a stream of consciousness. And when we as individuals, you and I, achieve a level of vibrational alignment, that achievement reverberates throughout all that is. This is something I was aware of as I moved through my tutelage with Abraham and Seth. And so I committed, right after that teaching, I committed to shifting not only my orientation to the subject of money and my vibration and resistance, but also assisting my parents in doing the same thing. And so there's a great big castle here, isn't there, for me around money? And the answer to the question, why aren't you rich yet, is because I'm soothing the resistance that has held my wealth back. And I can't work around my resistance, and neither can you. We all must deal with the resistance we've put on our path before the manifestation we desire unfolds. But the cool thing about it is there's distortion in what I just said, because you don't need to soothe the resistance on your path in order for the manifestation to unfold. That's not how it works. How it works is you soothe the resistance on your path, which then reveals that the manifestation was always there, because it always is. You see, when you have a desire for a manifestation, it's there instantly. The only question is, are you lined up to perceive it? One of the fundamental spiritual principles underlying physical reality is everything is happening all at once. So when you have a desire, it's instantly manifest. You don't have to make it happen. What you do have to do is line up with it. And that's what I talk about all day, every day, in every single one of my videos and in every client session. How to line up with the manifestations that are already there. And a key bit of resistance that keeps a lot of people from doing that, from lining up with their manifestation, is that they believe the manifestation's not there. They look around their life holding a castle in their mind and they're thinking, where is it? Where is it? They can't see it. And of course they can't see it because in the moment they're not aligned with it. But that doesn't mean it's not there. It is there. You just have to line up with it. And when you line up with it, you will begin to see it. But if you don't line up with it, then you tend to focus on the absence of it being there. And in the absence of it being there, then you start amplifying the fact that it's not there. And as a result of amplifying the fact that it's not there, you don't see it more. And then you start getting impatient, which is doubling down on your resistance. You're resisting your resistance. You get impatient, you're resisting your resistance. So you don't see it because you think it's not there, but it is there. So that's resistance. And then you double down on your resistance by getting impatient about it. And by getting impatient about it, you double down, and then you cause the delay to expand even more. This is why sometimes, well, this is why every time people have to live multiple life experiences, multiple lifetimes. Thank goodness we're eternal. We have all the lifetimes necessary to get to realize, I almost said get to the point of expansion, but there is no point of expansion because we're all eternal. To realize a consciousness that is aligned with our eternal expansion. So why am I not rich yet? I am rich. Oh, that was so good. I am rich. I have an abundance in my refrigerator. I have an abundance of a community that is more and more recognizing my influence on it. I have an abundance of clients, while at the same time having an abundance of free time around those clients. And I have an abundance of unfolding manifestations that keep me constantly surprised and delighted. And most importantly, I'm rich in the awareness that my financial abundance is unfolding too, in perfect timing. So good. I'm going to end it here. It's been a great live this morning. I appreciate there was a couple people came in and watched a little bit of it live. I appreciate those people who did so. I know there's going to be a moment in a probable future where I'm speaking with live audiences, and I'm eager for that unfolding. But for now, I really enjoy doing these lives just for the satisfaction I get in amplifying what I know and sharing it with others. It's such a good day. It's such a good time to be alive. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.